This video is about how to compare texts. Now, what do we mean by that? Comparing texts is noting the similarities or the differences, dissimilarities, between two or more texts. For example, just a simple example, just to illustrate what I mean by that, and give you two facts. The first one, Mount Everest. The height of Mount Everest is 8,850 meters. The second one is Mauna Kea. Mauna Kea, the height of Mauna Kea is 9,966 meters. Let's compare the height. How would you compare the height of these two mountains? Well, you could say, for example, Mauna Kea is taller than Mount Everest. That's one way of comparing. By using the word taller here and not a difference. By saying taller, I'm saying that the height of Mauna Kea is greater than the height of Mount Everest. Now let's compare these two mountains in a different way. For example, most of Mauna Kea is in the Pacific Ocean, with 4,205 meters above sea level. Whereas Mount Everest is on dry land, which makes Mount Everest the highest mountain. So here again, I've compared the two heights of the mountains but in a different way. And I use the word whereas to link my 2 points. And whereas here shows that I have noted a difference. To note a similarity, I could use a different technique. For example, both Mauna Kea and Mount Everest have a height above 8,000 meters. The word both here indicates that I have noted a similarity. In that both of them, Mauna Kea as well as Mount Everest, the two of them have a height higher than 8,000 meters. There are different words you can use when you link your points for your comparison to note a similarity or a difference. Now you can use words like both, as I have just done, or also, to, as well as, in the same way, similarly, which is the same as, test A and test B agree on, and so on and so on. All these terms can be used to note a similarity between two texts. If the two texts have different views, so opposing views, then we have to use different words like however, whereas, but, on the contrary. On the other hand, while, or text A disagrees with text B, on. By using these terms, you're seeing that these two texts differ. They have different views. But for your comparison to be valid, don't forget to link your points with this type of words. In the functional skills in English exam, you will be required to compare two texts. You could have a question such as, just giving you an example, compare the views of text A and text B of the dangers nuclear power represent and how these views are conveyed. We have two things here, two types of comparison you need to do. The first one is compare the views of text A and B on the dangers nuclear power represents. And the second part is compare how these views are conveyed. Views refer here in this context to the ideas, messages, opinions, points that a writer has on a particular topic. So you could have two texts and the writer gives you their own views, their own ideas, their own opinions on the same topic. Maybe similar views, maybe different views. But that's your task to identify if the views between the two texts will be the same or different. To highlight my point here, I'm going to give you an example. Two very short texts. Text A and text B. Text A and text B are both on nuclear power. Now the question is, compare the views of text A and text B on the dangers nuclear power represents. The dangers nuclear powers represent. So we need to look about what text A says regarding the dangers of nuclear power and what text B says regarding the dangers of nuclear power too. So you need to read text A and not the dangers. Identify the dangers. What are the dangers according to text A? And you need to do the same with text B. What are the dangers according to text B? These are my notes. This is an example of my notes. My notes for test A. What identified for test A is 2011 Fukushima disaster. Nuclear power is not safe according to test A. And that affected people and nature. What I identify in text B is, well, the opposite. Nuclear power is safe. And I said that Fukushima disaster is due to basic safety failures. So that implies it could have been avoided. Right. So these are my notes. Now I need to compare my notes. So am I comparing a similarity or a difference? Does test A agree with test B? Well, no. Test A does not agree with test B, or test B does not agree with test A. They have opposing views. So I need to show that in my comparison. For example, here is an example of a comparison. Test A is against nuclear power because it is not safe. I quote, nuclear power is unsafe. But, I use but for contrast, to show a difference. But, test B strongly disagrees, stating instead that it is safe. In bracket, I quote, much safer than it was in the past. And then I say, they both mention the 2011 Fukushima disaster. So I've got a similarity here because I use the word both. The similarity is they both write about 2011 Fukushima disaster. And then I use the word although. Although here implies a contrast. So either although here I'm going to introduce a difference. Although for opposite reasons. For test A, Fukushima illustrates the danger of nuclear power. The meltdown affected both people and nature, so it was detriment to people's health. In bracket, I quote, the meltdown was the worst. While, I link my point here with while, text B counteracts this by pointing out that it was an accident waiting to happen due to a lack of health and safety. I quote in brackets, the plant operator failed to meet basic safety requirements, implying the accident could have been prevented. So through my words of but, instead, although, while, I've shown the differences, also use both to show a similarity. It is very important for you to do the same, because if you just state test A says nuclear power is not safe because of Fukushima disaster. If you just state test B says nuclear power is safe, Fukushima disaster was due to basic safety failures, full stop. Well, we don't have a comparison. We don't have a comparison if you just state that because you have not told me or you have not noted if the point is the same or different. So you do need to use words like I have done, but instead although, while, or both to show what is similar and what is different. Another thing to keep in mind, the question asks you to compare the dangers of nuclear power or that nuclear power presents. So you need to be specific about the views, what the dangers are. So in your comparison, don't be generic. State what the dangers are. If you don't state what the dangers are, you're not going to get the point in your exam. You need to state and clearly state what the dangers are according to test A and what the dangers are according to text B, like I have done here. So that's our first comparison. Now the question is in two parts. The first part is about comparing the views of test A and test B of the dangers that nuclear power represents. And the second part is comparing how the views are conveyed. If you are doing functional skills English level 1, then you don't need to do that comparison about how the views are conveyed. This is not part of level 1. If you do level 2, then you have that second part to do. So at level 1, you don't have that part to do. You don't have to convey. You will not be asked to compare how the views are conveyed at level 1. Level 2, if you do the functional skills in English, level 2, you will have to do that. You will have to compare how the views are conveyed as well. So don't forget that part. Same question, 2 parts. Now, how are the views conveyed? What do we mean by that? What do we mean by how views are conveyed? Well, it's not about the dangers in themselves of nuclear power. It's not about what the points are. It's more about how these points are presented. So nothing to do with what the views are. That's for the first comparison. What the views are for the first comparison, the first part. How the views are conveyed is, well, how are these views presented? We present the views in a certain way. We could present them through statistics, for example, or through rhetorical questions, through hyperboles, what we call language features. We could also convey the views through your own point of view. So the point of view, what I mean by point of view here is if it is a first person view, or second person view, or third person view, in the singular or plural. What do I mean by that? Well, first person starts with you. So if you imagine yourself in a discussion, okay? Yourself in a discussion, it starts with you. I is the first person. I talk to someone in front of me, so I talk to you. You is the second person. First person, I, you, second person. Third person is anyone around who's not actively participating in the discussion, they are just listening. So it's he, she, it, they. Now we've got first person in the singular. So singular is just one person. So I, first person, singular. You, second person, singular. He, third person, singular. She, third person, singular. It, third person, singular again. Could be in the plural. So we could have the first person in the plural. The first person in the plural is we. We consists of me and someone else. We, first person in the plural. You, second person in the plural. The thing with you, it could be either plural or singular. In English, you don't make that difference. Other languages do, but not in English. The third person in the plural is they. They usually means more than one. So that's another way to convey your message, to convey your point. Type of person you use, first, second, third, in the plural or in singular. Now do note that the text quite often use more than just one point of view. So you could have a text with a first person in the singular as well as second person. Another way how views are conveyed is through the type of language you use. If you use formal language, informal language, colloquial, technical language, and so on and so on. Jargon, for example. So if we go back to our two texts here, text A and text B, and if we look at how views are conveyed. So we're going to look at what's similar or different in how the views are conveyed. You could compare the point of view. They use first person or second person or third person in both texts. You could compare the language features. You could compare the type of language. Here, I'm going to compare the language features. So here, I've looked at the language features, and you can see text A uses rhetorical questions, and I can see text B uses factual evidence, report for authoritative body. So I could create a comparison on that. So example of a comparison here. Text A uses rhetorical questions to make people think of the danger of nuclear power. Do we really want another disaster? And to make the reader side with his view. Text B, however, uses factual evidence, a report from an authoritative body, the National Diet of Japan Fukushima Nuclear Accident Independent Commissioner report. It also uses terms such as much less likely. This is not as assertive as text A. So here I have compared how the views are conveyed, and I use the word however to highlight a difference. So remember, at level 1, you'll be asked to compare two texts on a particular view, and you need to state what that view is. At level 2, you'll be required to compare two views, to compare two texts on a particular view again, as well as how the views are conveyed. So don't forget to also compare how the views are conveyed. For level 1 and level 2, when you compare text, remember to use the type of words that show if you have noted a similarity with words like both, as well as, and so on, or if you have noted a difference with words like whereas, however, and so on. I hope you have found this video useful. Thank you.